Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legions of Christ and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 217, we're covering Apostolicum Apostolatatum 15 to 16 on individual apostolate flows from Christian life. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we concluded Chapter 3, speaking about how Catholics need to work for the common good in all areas of culture and society, including politics, charities, NGOs, etc., and on all levels from local to international. Today, we start Chapter 4, which is the various forms of apostolate. I know it sounds a lot like Chapter 3. It's approaching it from a different angle. It's kind of like we're approaching it from the columns, now we're approaching it from the rows. So it's not so much totally different idea, but it's approaching it from a different perspective. And today the summary is there's a wide spectrum of apostolate, but it starts with individual lay apostolate, then moves to group apostolates. Paragraph 15 is like one line, and it's just about both individual and group apostolates. Paragraph 16 is much longer, so let's read 15 first. The laity can engage in their apostolic activity either as individuals or together as members of various groups or association. That's it. You can do apostolate on your own, you can do apostolate with groups. And that's important because some people really feel a lot better doing just solo. Some people feel a lot better just doing it in groups. Certain apostolates lend themselves more to groups or individuals. But this idea is that each person is called to be an apostle, to do apostolate. And that's really what we're getting to. You either do it on your own or with groups or associations. Now, paragraph 16 is substantially longer. It has 6 subparagraphs. We're going to read them in 4 groups. Paragraph 16a and b, all are called to apostolate, and it starts with each one. C, lay people witness to Christ by witnesses by example and words. D, lay people need to have and share higher motives for what they do, like why do we do apostolate? And E and F, live charity and little crosses as an apostolate. So going straight in, let's start reading with 16a and b. A, the individual apostolate, flowing generously from its source is in a truly Christian life, confer John 4, is the origin and condition of the whole lay apostolate, even of organized type, and it admits of no substitute. B, regardless of status, all lay persons, including those who have no opportunity or possibility for collaboration in associations, are called to this type of apostolate and obliged to engage in it. This type of apostolate is useful at all times and places, but in certain circumstances is the only one appropriate and feasible. So these paragraphs conclude with this idea that we all do this apostolate, right? We're helping the apostolate of witness and testimony and things like that by who we are. And sometimes this is all we could do, right? Somebody who is in the hospital dying of cancer can do a degree of witness, but probably can't preach and do other things with their life. And that also remembers that we are called to apostolate no matter the circumstance. No matter if I'm dying in the hospital of cancer or you are, each of us is called to do apostolate. Now, obviously, different times and places have different apostolates from that, and certain times are much more restricted than others. And the important thing here is we start with our own apostolate. Each one has to have your own apostolate, and from that flows this idea of the group apostolates, the associations of apostolate. And so we need, as a condition of apostolate, each lay person doing apostolate. We can't have apostolate of groups unless each person in that group is doing apostolate. Like, I can't go and serve the homeless and as a group unless each one of us serves the homeless, as an example of a kind of apostolate. So let's move on to 16c. Lay people witness to Christ by testimony and words. I wrote witness here twice, but really it's more by the example of life and by words. So let's read it. C. There are many forms of the apostolate whereby the laity build up the church, sanctifying the world, and give it life in Christ. A particular form of the individual apostolate, as well as a sign specifically suited to our times, is the testimony of the whole lay life, arising from faith, hope, and charity. It manifests Christ living in those who believe in him. Then by the apostolate, the spoken and written word, which is utterly necessary under circumstances, lay people announce Christ, explain and spread his teaching, in accordance with one's status and ability, and faithfully profess it. So here we note that the lay apostle is completely varied. There are varied circumstances. We talked about the social milieu a day or two ago and things like that. And we can all witness to Jesus by our life. All of you can witness to Jesus by your life as lay people. I'm just saying us, but this is one of the few ones where this one at Christus Dominus that don't apply to me as a priest and religious. So this is particularly important today. One of the things that I think it was Paul VI who said, and other people have talked about how today people don't look for teachers. They look for witnesses. They might accept a teacher, but only after that teacher has shown themselves to be a witness. We need to manifest Christ by those who believe. And then after that, after we've witnessed by our testimony of life, we then go to speaking and writing. And I do this as a priest, but we need lay people to do this as well. And it's noted in accord with their abilities. If my nephew is in elementary school, is explaining who Jesus is to his friend, because some of my nephews go to public school, he is not going to have the same level and depth and detail and precision that I, as a theology professor, is going to have. But he would be doing a great apostolate if he's doing that, even if he's imprecise and things like that. That is, the important thing here is to understand how each person does in their own way, in their own circumstances. Despite his inadequacies as an elementary school student, he could probably witness to a friend in his class better than I can, because I don't know if I've met any of the kids in his class. So they'd be like, who is this? Oh, it's so-and-so's uncle, but what do I have to do with him? Whereas if so-and-so, my nephew, said that, it'd be good. I had to stop and re-record here because I said my nephew's actual name. So those type of things. That's the idea of how we each manifest in our own ways. And sometimes even if in an objective sense, our explanation is not as good, for that individual we're witnessing to, we can be a better witness than somebody who might objectively be a better witness. So now we move on to 16D, which is talking about lay people need to have and share higher motives for what they do. So this is about our motivation, why we do apostolate, so people understand why we do it as well. That's why we manifest the motives and share them. So let's read it. D. Furthermore, in collaboration as citizens of the world, in whatever pertains to the upbuilding and conducting of the temple order, the laity must seek in the light of faith loftier motives of action in their family, professional, cultural, and social life, and make them known to others when the occasion arises. Doing this, they should be aware of the fact they are cooperating with God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier, and are giving praise to Him. We can get caught up in the day-to-day. A little prayer here, work, our kids' sports, go to Sunday Mass, maybe do a little volunteer work, things like that. And that's often good. It's good to have those habits. It's good to have those virtues, things like that. But at times, you need to step back and say, why? Ask why we do it. Providentially, and kind of unrelated, this is my homily today as I was writing this, because I generally record record these right after each other within an hour or two. So this morning, that was the homily I gave in Mass, kind of providentially. But that idea of all of us needing motives for what we do, all of us needing to sometimes witness those motives. Why do I do this? Why am I so happy? Why am I showing Jesus here? And what are our motives, right? Jesus, Mary, the church, the Trinity. And how do we seek them? We seek them in faith. We cooperate with God. God is the creator. We work with Him. We cooperate with Him. So let's move on to our last two subparagraphs, E and F, which are about living charity and little crosses as an apostolate. So let's read them. E. Finally, the laity should vivify their life with charity and express it as best they can in their works. F. They should all remember that they can reach all men and contribute to the salvation of the whole world by public worship and prayer, as well as by penance and voluntary acceptance of labors and hardships of life, whereby they become like the suffering Christ. Confer 2 Corinthians 4 and Colossians 1. So these two paragraphs are very brief. E is obviously about that idea of charity, giving us motivation, want to do good for others, things like that. F reminds us that it isn't just this kind of apostle, but by doing things like public worship, praying together, doing penance, voluntarily taking on sacrifices, we can witness in that way, we can testify in that way, and that helps people to follow Jesus. It also helps form us as apostles if we're doing all those things. There's a Catholic practice of offering it up. I know when I was in the seminary, sometimes anything would be tough, and it'd be like, we'd be on the hike and you'd be tired, to be like, offer it up for the souls in purgatory, offer it up for somebody's going to die today and that they're going to be helped out. And that is an apostolate even if it's not the most visible, because we know that the spiritual power, the spiritual connections are there, and it's not just the physical, visible connections. There are those invisible spiritual connections. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you could donate to help StarCrest produce it, another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow I'm going to continue with the next paragraph of Apostolicam Exercitatem 17 on the need for individual apostolate. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan.
Amen.